Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance, and today I have a special guest. I have Casting Society, or CSA, casting director Robin Carus. Enjoy. Okay, I have a special guest with me today. I have Robin Carus of Casting Society. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So the first thing that I was fascinated with is you always wanted to be a casting director.
hmm
Was was there an exact moment that gave you that?
I was 6 when I proclaimed I wanted to be a casting director. I grew up in New Jersey and I watched my aunt work. And I would come into the city as a little girl, and she was the head of casting for an ad agency called BBD&O. And at the time, it was the largest ad agency. And and my aunt was, kick ass, and she was this head of casting, and there were always commercials going on, and I loved sitting at the table and these people, and I thought that they thought that I was part of the casting team, at 6. And so uh and so then they would say thank you, and I'd say thank you so much for coming. And I thought, oh, it was just magic. And I I loved being in my aunt's office, and keep in mind, child of the 80s. And so there was a Rolodex on her desk. And I remember, like, I used to love seeing who was in her Rolodex, between the agents to the union. And I remember, okay, so I've said this a few times in different interviews and stuff, but I I was obsessed as a child. I didn't know I was watching reruns of The Partridge Family, and I loved David Cassidy. And so I once called the union, like as a 7-year-old, because I thought, as long as I was in New York, why don't we have lunch? And I think, scary, like, how did the union talk to a 7-year-old for as long as they did? And I asked for membership. I knew what to do. And I, I just, I don't know. There was never a moment in my 6-year-old brain. I just knew I loved watching my aunt work. It was, oh, it was magic. And I throw that word around, I think, all the time. But to me, she was always going off to theater, and she would take me to museums and to theater. And my first Broadway show was Annie. And I was obsessed, like any little girl. I sang Tomorrow like nobody's business. And I don't know, I guess that was it. And that was my childhood. And since I grew up before a time where there was IMDb and IBDB and various DBs, I used to, as credits would roll, as a way to keep up with the Joneses, and by the Joneses, I do mean my aunt, I would memorize credits. And I could do everything. I could memorize name after name after name, and position after position after position. And my aunt, it was my freak carnival skill. I didn't realize it. I had like this
Yeah.
want anything. And so, but I did it. And my aunt would say, how did you know that? And I would say, oh, this is where the position was. And then I found out, as I read resumes, I could do the same thing with a resume. Now that I'm my age now, which I will not reveal, I I think that I can kind of, there are certain things I can get, but I don't have that same, like, computer, scroll down kind of
Mm.
memory that I once had as a child. But it served me well, definitely in the beginning of my career, and leading into my what would be my career. And so I guess that's it. So it was 6 years old, and I kind of knew, and maybe for a hot second, I wanted to be an actor. And the other really interesting thing I think about the career path that I took, though, even the idea of my loving the performing arts as much as I do, I was horrifically shy as a child. Like, so shy, teachers would write on my report card, Robin needs to talk more because we don't know what she sounds like. And as a way to build up my self-confidence, my mother gave me voice lessons. and she heard me singing and said, "Would you like this?" And, it takes a good teacher. And we found this teacher in my hometown in New Jersey. Her name was Faith Klein. Faith Klein stayed in my life until, until her last days. And Faith was a teacher who absolutely unconditionally loved me and believed in me. And it was so important and so impactful to me in my existence. Now, my aunt encouraged me and influenced me business wise, but some of that, how you have a multitude of influence
Yeah.
in your life when it comes to the heart of the business and the love and the passion for what you do and why you do it. And Faith was one of those people. And then, so she just had a love of performing and encouraging the kids and adults that she worked with, and that was it. And so, I guess I had my little team of people along with my family and, some friends who were like, "You can do it,
Right.
you can do it." And that was it. And I think once I was sort of on a path, I was on a path, and I kind of, I had to kind of it was a step by step kind of thing. And I think one day it was literally right before I began high school. And I said to my mother, after a lifetime of being very, 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 very shy, I said to her, "I'm going to go into high school and not be shy." My mom said, "What does that mean, Robin?" And I said, "I don't know yet, but I'm not going to be shy." And so sure enough, I get into homeroom and it's a whole new ball of wax, and here I am. And I think I was no longer just simply a quiet girl who said nothing. I think I was somebody who had something to say and wanted to say it. And and that was it. So I guess voila. And I think with all of that, I had greater confidence, and I started, kind of exploring what I really love, which is theater and acting and music and all of that stuff. And and like many high school kids, I was a theater nerd, and I would have it the other way.
Interesting.
So
That's fine. Now, as a child, could you look at, as you said, you'd look at headshots. Would you be able to like recognize things that I'm sure you recognize now when you look at headshots and going like, that's he's right for this part? Or did you have that innate ability to see?
I don't know. Although I will tell you, my aunt would ask me, because of my memory, she would ask me who I think would be right for things. So I think she was always really curious what I thought. And of
Yeah.
course, like, when you're a kid, right, you're relegated to only the things you're watching. As adults, we kind of watch a little bit of everything, like a smattering. Like even if we don't really like it, we watch it just to make sure we don't really like it, but we want to know who the people are. And
Yeah.
so as a child, I think that I knew soap operas because we watched soap operas at home. I don't know if my mom would want me to admit that, but we did. Um, and 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 whatever the nighttime television was, and because my aunt did commercials and did voiceovers in my household, it wasn't enough to say, "Oh, I'm watching a cartoon." We had to know who did the voiceovers for these things. So that was a little extra added bonus, because given what my aunt did for a living, we knew that we weren't just watching Scooby-Doo, and we knew that there were people that actually voiced these things, and some of these people that voiced stuff like commercials, etc. And my aunt, if she was visiting us or we were visiting her and we would turn on the TV, I point because my TV is right there. My tiny TV. But 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 in any case, like what would happen is my aunt would say, "Oh, that was mine. I worked on that," or, "Oh, that's, so and so on this." So it was absolutely super cool, to have that
Yeah.
information. I will say though, sometimes, much to my mother's chagrin, some of my need for the reality part of there were times I was absolutely a kid and I could watch something and
Mm.
kind of soak in everything that the average kid would soak in, or get scared about if it was something scarier. And so, um, but then there were moments like, for example, um, we had a benefit in my hometown, and my mom did this Annie benefit to help. And so Bill Berloni, who is very famous for handling, all of the Sandys ever,
Mm.
that were a part of Annie, etc. So Bill Berloni actually was there with the then Sandy dog, and Sandy was signing all of these things, with a paw print and saying "Love Sandy." So I unfortunately stood there saying, "I just need you to know that dogs don't know how to write." And my mom said, "Can you not green kill this for everyone, Robin?" And here I was in like my 7 or 8 year old glory, and I was like, just wanted everyone to know. And so
So you like to know everything. That's so cool. Even as a kid.
I think I think I was into what was happening in the
Yeah.
backstage of everything. Um, so, but again, because I had the aunt who exposed me to all of that and all of the
Yeah.
people, we knew
Interesting.
that there wasn't just a Muppet show. We knew that there were people that were operating those Muppets, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool that you had like that inside track into the business. Because I mean, nowadays you can just go on IMDb, you can go on, Wikipedia, you can find out all that stuff. But back then, it's like you didn't know when things were really canceled unless you were like a child lucky enough to read like the trades or something, or like a variety or something. You just was like, oh, it's no longer on TV anymore.
You know what? It's very funny. Maybe because there's so many different mediums. I will say this though, and this is where I get a little snobby. Every people will call themselves a lot of different things. Like you directed one thing, therefore you are a director. You helped a friend out with a production, therefore you're a casting director. But I think that you really have to earn the stripes, for any
Yeah.
given career. And yes, there's luck, but earn the stripes. It's okay to earn the stripes. And people understand that and they want that. They want to see you reach and grow. And so I think that when I hear that and see that people are not earning the stripes and just sort of want to go for it and they say this is what I am, and I think
Yeah.
you're 13, I don't understand. Well, how are you a casting director? You're 13.
Did your aunt kind of instill that in you, do you think?
No, I think it comes with time. I think it comes
Just
with time.
time?
Yeah, that she didn't instill. I mean, to this day, she would help me, and she would help me jump over the moon if I needed help. And we're very close. And she's my mother's only sister. And
Mm.
she's a part of my universe. I mean, even down to like right before you and I got on this call, I was talking to her, so she is I don't know, she's just a huge part of my life. And and uh, and I think that what I did garner from her is her good graces. She is I'll say there are gentlemen casting directors and gentlewoman casting directors. And she's definitely a gentlewoman casting director. And I think that she started at a time, obviously a number of years before me, where she really did have to break boundaries.
Yeah.
And I watched her grow and become this outrageous entrepreneur, and she's so fantastic about like figuring out things and earning her audience. And I have an audience, but not like hers. And
Yeah.
I get in awe of it, and so to me it's just cool. And so and funny enough, like when we are on Clubhouse, occasionally we're in rooms together, and at first we try and hide the fact that we're related. Our names are not alike, we don't sound alike. um but then it always seems to come out, and I'm like, this is my aunt, I love my aunt. Because there'll always be the question, how did you get started? And I'm like, well, I can't hide the fact that I'm
Yeah.
gonna say my aunt is Terry Berland. And so there you have it. So I mean, so she instilled in me that you have to be good and kind for sure in this business. um
Yeah.
Never, never, never cut people down. She always admired people greatly. She always had an amazing circle of colleagues who worked in the business that both did what she did and did other things in the business too. So it's she came from a good era of people, or maybe she was a good person within the confines of the era she came up in. I don't
Yeah.
know, but but if that's who my role model is in terms of the business, I'll take it for sure. You know, I can say we will always all say our parents are amazing, our siblings are cool, but you know, when you have somebody that does what you do and that you're so
Yeah.
close to them and they're your family, then you can definitely say, this is
Mm.
it. This is why I do what I do. I watched her. I have my own spin on things. I've walked my miles and I continue to walk my miles. But thank goodness, you know, somewhere walking with me is my aunt.
Yeah. Now, I noticed you went to University of Massachusetts. What do you think you learned from going there that you brought to casting?
Um, the business, not necessarily casting. I learned to be a little bit of an entrepreneur. UMass Amherst, interestingly, I think their theater program has grown and grown and grown since I've been there. I had great professors, mind you, super good.
Hmm.
Um, I had a few TAs that I will tell you I still remain friendly with to this day. By the way, I have a new neighbor who apparently has a dog, which you might hear right now.
A little
I am
bit.
okay, great. It's like, that's awkward. Anyway, so but I think that what the program taught me was that you can be entrepreneurial and you can create your opportunities. There was always a chance for a student to direct something. And I think there was a theater company on campus called New World Stages. And I had taken, by the time I graduated, I had taken all of the undergrad classes I really want to take. And there was this one professor there at the time named Roberta Uno, who had this theater company, and I was allowed to take a graduate level class. I was with one of my favorite TAs, who is a professor now at NYU, and his name is Joe
Mm.
Couture. So I will name drop him and say that he is divine. His theater insights are gorgeous to this day, and I know he has his own following of folks from where he teaches, and and I would listen to him wax philosophical as a grad student, and I thought, I wish I was that eloquent. I really wish I was that eloquent. He could have recited the phone book, and I would have thought it was magnificent. But what Roberta Uno let us do was let us, you know, take a play, and we can and create it in a space. So I don't even remember the play I utilized, but I said, I want to cast for you. And she said, you want to cast for me? And I said, I would like to cast something for you. Let me be your casting director. She said, okay. And I knew I needed to find 5 women, not just of any color. They had to be 5 Black women. And I was allowed to scout within the confines of the 5 college school system, which was there. And I did it, and I found it, and I helped her get it off its feet. And it was really kind of cool. And uh, I think that I was very grateful that there was somebody that said, I know what you're trying to do. I, I don't know if this is the best place, but you'll try it and see how it goes. And I did it. And it was hard. And who knew I would have even harder casting when I graduated, you know? There would always be the next hard thing.
Yeah.
But that's it. So there you go.
Wow. That's cool. So I want to go back to one thing because you were talking about the place. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what, like, how that helped with the cast? Is that something that you did, like you honed in on a place, and
Yes.
that's kind of how you came up with the idea of
I
the
think
cast?
no, I think that we were given plays, if I'm not mistaken. It's so many years ago you're asking me this. Holy
I
mackerel.
know.
Sorry, I'm reaching into the memory bank. So I think we were given a play, and I said I want to be the one to cast it. I didn't really care about directing it, but if I had
Yeah.
to, I had to. Um, and so but it was a reading. So
Yeah.
it didn't have to be fully staged or anything. And I believe on campus we had like a Malcolm X Center. And I thought it would be really cool if it was in the lounge of the Malcolm X. and you had, and with all, you know, like on many campuses, you have to reserve the right to be there. And so I told her what I wanted and how I wanted to advertise it. And, you know, all of that had to be approved. And so, you know, and then I had auditions and that was it. And keep in mind, it's college auditions. It's not like what I do now. And so,
Yeah.
you know, you had your 20 people that showed up and you were like, hello, 20 people. This is amazing.
It's interesting because I interviewed Christopher Renshaw, who did he did the 1996 version of The King and I that was on Broadway,
Yeah.
and he talked about how that was one of the things he used was the place. So I
Oh,
was interested in like how you, because that's
I
how
think,
Key starts.
I think that for the actors itself, it was a great sell that I got to say it was there, you know, because
Mm,
it would be a beautiful location. And obviously, topically, it matched so well with at the time what the play was. And yeah, so.
mm, yeah. Now you also were an intern for Seinfeld and the Larry Sanders Show. I'm a big Seinfeld fan and Larry Sanders Show. So what was that like?
Oh goodness. That was I was 18 years old and I was in Los Angeles. My aunt was on the commercial side of Lieberman Hirschfeld, and she had Terry
Mm,
Broadcasting, which was sort of company within company. And um and it was outrageous. I mean, but it wasn't just at the time, Lieberman Hirschfeld cast every sitcom, plus Party of Five, plus there was an MTV show called Dead at 21, and
mm,
um, and I remember being terrified of being with all of the assistants in what I call the big room,
yeah.
that's where all the assistants sat and like made their phone calls, and I wanted quiet when I made phone calls because I would get too nervous and I would hear their voices in my ear. I hated that. And in every office I went to, I would hate that actually, but I
Yeah.
was and discovered I hated that.
It's kind of like
Um,
the stockbroking like world where you're
yes.
just like you're with the people you're competing with.
Mhm. Yeah. And every now and again you get Mr. Seinfeld calling saying, so what pretty ladies did we see? And I did not meet Jerry Seinfeld, whom I
Yeah.
always referred to on the phone as Mr. Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Um, I, I, let's see, I got to meet, you know, Kramer. He came into the office and Michael was actually quite nice. You
Yeah.
know, I know he has the persona of being a little bit rock and roll, but he was really very sweet. Um, meet Jason. I must have either met Jason or talked to him a bunch of times on the phone.
Yeah. He's a
Um,
theater guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so, you know, so I got to work on that. Um, Party of Five, I kind of knew was going to be a big hit because it just was beautiful. You know, the
Mm,
cat, this when the scripts would come in, I loved looking at the sides to that show specifically. You know, it comes in piecemeal, so I didn't know, you know, with Seinfeld and the sitcoms, the sides would come in piecemeal. So this is what they have to read. This is the whole,
yeah.
you know, they have to kind of get it really quickly. And of course, with the drama, they got to sit and stir with it, you know, kind of like a real theater piece. And
Yeah.
so, and that was kind of cool. And I really related to that a lot.
Do
Uh,
you think that's missing in casting a little bit? Is that sitting and stir? Is like everything's so quick now. Do you think that that's
I think people still have people still are able to sit and stir.
mm,
Should, and they should ask questions. And I think that whereas people want you to dissect things very, very quickly, um, I think that it's up to the actor to be able to ask the question, can I have, you know, is it possible to get, can you give me more context? I
mm,
think that for the casting directors, we already do that. You know, we're like, can I have it? Can I, you know, can you give me
yeah.
this so I know what the heck I'm saying? Um, so,
Yeah.
but and sometimes people don't want the actors to have everything. And you have to also be smart enough to say, why don't you want that in
Yeah.
case they ask me? You know, or why don't you want them to have it in case they ask me?
Yeah.
So
Well, Woody Allen's very much like that. He's even like that when they get cast. They
Yeah.
only get their scenes. Alan Alda famously said in Crimes and Misdemeanors, he's like, I didn't even know I was married. So yeah, so
But
that had to have been like interesting though, seeing all those. Yeah, you're talking about Party of Five, you're talking about Seinfeld. I mean, these are the shows that kind of ruled that mid '90s kind of time,
yeah.
you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
which yeah,
And, and although there are sitcoms now, there wasn't like must see TV. We don't have that anymore because it should be
no,
like must see Netflix.
yeah. Now the viewer is able to decide when they're going to watch something, but
Yeah.
with DVR and stuff, that's why they're having such a hard time with advertising. Because they're like, people aren't watching it at the designated time, so people just skip through the commercials, and they're like,
Yeah.
how do we find different ways to advertise? Whereas I heard like now they're trying to superimpose advertisements in the show on the reruns so that people will, so that they're still getting the idea. But that had to have been an interesting. And Larry Sanders' show, when you brought up that, I mean, that pretty much gave them a blueprint for Curb Your Enthusiasm,
Correct.
which is the successor in some ways to Seinfeld. So I don't know. I was fascinated when I heard you talk about those. I was like, wow, that had to have been like a young and in this weird, world where it's just like all these hit shows. So
It
I'm
was
fascinated.
a dream experience for like an 18-year-old. It was a dream experience. I don't know. When I
Yeah.
started in the business, really was living such a wonderful dream. Now, keep in mind, you go through curves in the road, right? But people
Yeah.
don't know too many things about the bumps in the road. But nor is it really so exciting to talk about. But but uh I have to say that those beginning few years of my life in the business, ooh, what a great whirlwind, and
Yeah.
what beautiful offices did I have just the honor of working for. Some are now defunct, like Lieberman Hirschfeld, though both Meg Lieberman and Mark Hirschfeld are both still in the business, and certainly my aunt is in the business, and so what a great honor, to be able to say that. I don't know. I push papers for them. So
Now you also worked as the head of casting for Theater Works USA. You were there from July 2000 to July 2008. What was that like?
uh it's different experience.
Mm,
I had been in for them several times to interview, and it turns out that the then casting director, I had been in to audition. I had been in to interview for the casting spot, and they didn't hire me. I was very young, and then they had this associate spot open up, and I was young and hungry, and at the time, because it was when people still had paper resumes, I decided I needed a gimmick, so I wanted a good font and a good paper. So I decided that I would send my resume out on green vellum paper, sometimes blue, if I was feeling fun. And so they had all these rainbow resumes of mine in different translucent vellum pieces of paper, and they loved it. It was a great gimmick at the time.
yeah.
And they said to me, I think I had been in as many times as probably the actors who have auditioned for me have been in. And so uh the artistic director said eventually, if the casting director likes you, just know I love you. And now here's the crazy thing. So let's bring it back to my Aunt Terry. So whenever my aunt would come into New York, she would have me work on all of her cue cards that she would use for when she was teaching. And I have pretty neat handwriting. It's like a little bit like drafter's handwriting. And I'll rack that up to parochial school. Anyway, so in any case, she would bring them in. Her then assistant had awful handwriting, and so she said, I'm bringing in my stuff for my niece. Fine, she left it at that. So here I am interviewing, and I think it's going okay. And the casting director has this very monotone voice compared to my, the voice that you hear now, which sounds a little bit like a Smurf. And so in any case, Margaret Burns, who I will name because I love her to death, Margaret said to me in her monotone voice, and she kind of reminded me of Daria. She had these glasses. So
That's so funny.
and she would say things like, I'm tweaked, Robin, I'm tweaked. And she would never let me see her emotion at all. And she knew it was a game. It was a complete game. Okay, so Margaret said to me, she looks at my resume and she says, "Oh, Terry Burland, you know Terry." I said, "Yes, I know Terry." Now, you know very well that when people ask you that, it could be a double-edged sword. It could be wonderful or tragic. And
Exactly.
so,
And you can't read her because she's Daria.
oh my God, she was a stone. I was like, what am I gonna do? Okay, so she said to me, okay, so she says, "So did you like working for Terry?" I said, "I loved her." I was like, God. So,
Like...
and then she's like, "How long have you known her?" And my whole life. I don't know what to do with this. Anyway, so, and I'm a really awful liar. So I happen to open up my notebook. Margaret sees my handwriting. She looks at me, looks at the resume, looks at my handwriting, does it again and again, and then she leaves. I'm like, what? She leaves to go laugh. She leaves to go laugh at herself because she realizes I'm the niece. So then she said, "Robin," and I said, "Yes, Margaret." And she said, "I worked for Terry." I said, "No." I said, did you like her?" And she said, "Yes, she was wonderful, but she always brought her cards back to her niece in New York." And I said, or New Jersey. And so, because that's where and so then she said, "Yes, Robin, that would be you, wouldn't it?" And I was like, and it was almost like, "That would be you." And it was like, "Yes, it was me. I'm so sorry." And so,
yeah. But she can't read her, so you're like, is she happy? Is she mad? Like,
right. And so then she's like, "So you want the job?" And I was like, "Yes." So 9 months into my working at TheaterWorks, Margaret announced she was leaving and I was taking over. And I was a really young head of casting. And I got to work on some of the most incredible things with some of the most incredible up-and-coming artists. Some of them like, Bobby Lopez and Kristen Anderson Lopez. And I'm trying to think, like Larry O'Keefe and Nell Benjamin, Gordon Greenberg in terms of directors, and Joe Calarco and Marcia Milgram Dodge. And the list kind of goes on and on and on with incredible people. And even the idea that I got to discover so many actors along the way was just super cool. Or even fight for some actors that I didn't get my way on. And
yeah.
and I will tell you this too. I worked on one of the productions that I don't even know if they still have in rep because I haven't been there in so many years, but it was called Freedom Train. It was the story of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. One of the actors who got his equity card at TheaterWorks, I believe in either 1974 or 1975, was Chuck Cooper. Chuck Cooper did the show and got his equity card and met what would be his son's godmother, who would go on to direct the show herself, and her name is Joy. And so meanwhile, Chuck has a son named Eddie. Eddie was graduating from Ithaca College and obviously auditioned for me. And the very cool thing is that I got to give Eddie his equity card doing the very same show, kind of like 30 years later or 20 years later, then 20 something years later than his dad, so that was kind of cool that it became generational.
Wow. Yes. So you strike me as somebody who likes to work with somebody when they're in the room.
I love it. And I follow them out too, much to their chagrin sometimes. Mhm.
That's funny.
And I think what will happen is I'll be in the room and my creative team will say, if only they did. And it's one of those things where I'll say, wait, if only they did, they're still here. Let's get them in. Let's make them do
Yeah.
it. And so I'll say, here's the deal, which I get mocked for because I'll say, here's the deal quite a lot. And so I'll say, here's the deal. This is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to sound. No more, no less.
Mm.
And then, that's what will happen. And either they get it or they don't. And either they appreciate it or they don't,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Wow, that's so nice of you that you will do that. You'll chase them out all and be like, no, 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 we need you back. Bring him back in.
I I want I think that I realize that not every audition can be a teaching moment. I do understand that.
Yeah.
I will say when I was at Theater Works and I would see kid after kid after kid, a lot of 20 and 30 somethings. And there was this one young woman I worked that walked in the room once, and she was a wallflower at best. And and the director she was in for, he was tough. And I won't name him because I happen to love him, but he is a toughie if he does not love you. And he could eat her for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She walked out visibly upset. I knew that she was visibly upset. I could see it. She was really trying not to cry in the room. And so I had a general call to like find actors, just to kind of see what they were about. And so I brought some folks in, and she was one of those people. And I remember that I didn't have my auditions where I usually had them at Chelsea Studios, where my offices were located at the time. And so I wound up, we were at Ripley Greer, and I said to her, okay, the sound, I wanted to hit the back wall, and I said, this is what I want. And so she started, and it was just so quiet. You could barely hear her. I said, can you stop for a moment? And I could tell defeat washed over her. And I said, what do you do for a living? And she said, I'm an actor. And I said, if you are an actor, then I need for you to act. And I said, do you realize that I believe in you? I need for you to believe in yourself. And I don't know if anyone had ever told her that they believed in her. And she said, you believe in me. And I said, yes. I said, but I want you to take the energy of that sentiment and use it in your work. And so she did. Was she the best? No. Did she improve by leaps and bounds? Yes. I don't believe I ever hired her, but when she walked out, she said, could I give you a hug? And I said,
Oh,
absolutely. And I think that in the room, for a lot of actors, and it doesn't make a difference whether you're a famous person or a person who is trying to get in the door, anywhere in the door, in any door. I think that you need people who believe in you. And I think that
yeah.
sometimes you need for people to say that they believe in you, because it's not enough to just get a feeling about it, like a maybe. It should be a definite, you know?
Yeah.
So I think
That's
it makes it impact on someone.
how do you feel now? Because I mean, now we're seeing that the self-tape is becoming the way of auditioning with the advent of COVID and stuff.
Mhm.
How do you feel that's going to impact direct? Will you just give them the notes uh when you see it and be like, can you do this again? Or like how do you
Sometimes you
see
do.
that?
Sometimes you do say, can I see it? Can we retape this? I didn't get what I need. Or sometimes you'll say, I
Hmm.
want it done 2 different ways. And and sometimes you'll say, like, let's meet on Zoom so we can actually see each
Hmm.
other face to face. It's not perfect, you know that.
Yeah.
But it's more. It's a little bit more of a connection because you get to see what's happening in the eyes. and you get to see, oh, this is their room set up, just like you can see behind me is a bookcase. There's a few
Yeah.
pictures behind me. I get to see in your room, oh, this is how much, like, let's say it's you auditioning for me. This is how much room Justin has to work with. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool. Like we can make do with all of this. This is good, you know? And I think that if you, like, I had a young man audition for me and did Shakespeare, and he thought I really wanted to see everything. I said, no, 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 because it's Zoom and I don't have the glory of a whole audition room. I want you to sit and I want you to tell me the story and use your
Right.
Zoom camera, as sort of like the eyes and the audience. And I said,
Yeah.
let me see you so I get to see your reaction. And I said, like, let's go slow. And it worked. So
Wow. Do you think that that's kind of where we're going? I imagine as Zoom improves more and more, that it will be more feasible to do more things with this technology,
um
so that it feels like you actually are in the room.
I hope so. Right now it doesn't. It's just a
Yeah.
standby. It's a band-aid.
Yeah.
I but I will tell you, I do love being in the room. I wish it was a little bit safer. You know, uh, I don't know what it will be with, this virus that has befallen our society, but I I love being in the audition room. Those are
Yeah.
those are great days for me. Those are days where you're like, hello, this is it. Every time you walk into the audition room, it's like back to school. It's that first day
Yeah.
of school all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. That's, I don't know. I think I'd like to see it go back to where it is, but it just seems like that's kind of where it's going, is the self-tape and Zoom, and or another form of Zoom where it's just made specifically for actors, and
Yeah.
where like, I don't know, what let's think about this. What do you think would improve Zoom? Like, what would you like to be able to do that you can't do other than be in the room with them? Like, what do you think could improve it?
I wish, even as you and I were talking, I had one moment where I stuck, and I wish that there wasn't like that stick ability,
Yeah.
like where your camera freezes.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of that. And when you're listening to people sing, I wish that the music could be filtered differently, almost as if it were coming
Mhm.
from like a Spotify, if you will. And then, you know what I mean? Like I wish that in terms of working with musicians or music, that it was a lot
Yeah.
clearer. So
Yeah, no, because especially with music, yeah, it's a delayed response. I
mhm,
mean, straight plays you can do more with it, but yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
yeah.
the audio, they should look at the audio and making it more cohesive.
So Zoom has to get on that pronto.
They do. Now, you've casted the Seussical,
I did.
the revival. Tell me a little bit about that.
Uh, my Seuss, I had the honor and pleasure of working with Marcia Milgram Dodge, Tony nominated director choreographer of Ragtime. Um, and I believe it was pre-Ragtime actually. Um, and I got to work with her on this piece, and the concept of it, rather than what they did on Broadway, was kids in a uh, kids kind of and their imagination being brought to life. And they had Seuss hands, which I cannot do, but looked something kind of like this. And there were two different types of Seuss hands. And if you could do all the Spock stuff, you can do Seuss hands. Um, and they kind of I had this young cast of actors, and at first they toured with it, and then we settled at the Lucille Hotel for a summer run, and I was able to have, again, I'll say the words honor and pleasure, to work with Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty on it. And from that show, I can say that I met some just outrageously dynamite performers. Some have left the business, but many are still in the business. And and it was just a lovely experience, and to be with this young, look, whenever you're with a cast that's young and hungry and is excited for work, and just is dynamic, and when they're in their costumes, they look so dynamic. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Now, I will tell you this too, because this is part of business, but some people who did the tour and nothing was promised to anyone. But there were some who did the tour that went on to do the off-Broadway production. There were some that did not. And, there were obviously hurt feelings, 'cause, everyone wants to continue on to the bigger bone,
Yeah.
But I think that if you handle things right, and if you have a level of transparency with people and a level of kindness and care, then I think that the relationship does not suffer. It might get tense for a day or two, and then they kind of have their reckoning, and then you say, oh, all right, are we cool? Are we back to everything again? And so thank goodness, I think that everyone that worked on that show, I had the original company, I'll say, I had a really great relationship with. Then it went on to tour a lot more, and I loved it. But keep in mind, when you're doing the tour version, there's different stakes involved, and you get people who get tired of the road really quickly. And I think that went with any of the tours. So
Yeah.
Seussical itself was a wonderful privilege. I will say Seussical in its first inception, leading to the off-Broadway run at the Lucille Hotel, couldn't have been beat. Just really couldn't have, in terms of energy and feel, and the dynamic and the cast. Everyone loved each other. And then when it's on the road, and it has its run, then people can't stand each other. You're like, oh. So yeah.
Actually, another Chicken and Biscuits. I wanted to listen to the music of it, but I can't find a recording of it.
It was a play, so it wasn't a musical.
Oh, okay. All right, then I apologize.
Yeah. So yeah, and that was done.
Can you a little how?
That was done at Queens. I did the version at Queens Theater, and I did not
Yeah.
transfer with it when it went to Broadway. So again, it was, when you're working on a show in development, you actually really never know where a performance will go, and you don't know sometimes what's happening behind the scenes and how they're working angles, and where they can take something, and so unfortunately, and it was we had this wonderful fun cast at Queens Theater, and of course the pandemic struck and we were forced to close 2 weeks early, and that was so weird. And I think we were at the opening night, and we knew that there was a virus somewhere, and you didn't know, how like in the beginning of COVID, when it was still known as Corona.
If that was gonna be 4 weeks, it'll be a couple
Yes.
weeks.
So I was like, it
Yeah.
is somewhere, but it's not in Queens. So we didn't.
That's funny.
So when I remember we had our opening night, and I was like, so far everyone looks really good. Nobody looks sick. And I didn't know what it was going to look like, right? We didn't
Yeah.
know it came on like the flu. I thought maybe people would walk around like with the pox, I had no idea.
No, you didn't know who had it, or it's just
A ticking time bomb, everyone.
yeah. There you go. There's a film or a play,
Right.
the
Right.
question, who has it? It's Clue, but
God.
it's Corona.
Gosh. I don't know.
One thing I wanted you to talk about, because you have a lot of experience with musicals, as well as sitcoms and all of it. What would you say is the difference between the casting of all of those? What's the difference between casting a straight? It's kind of a broad question. I'm trying to simplify it.
Look, I think I can get this, but here's the thing. Very often when you're casting a musical, you have to figure out if the person can act and it really depends on how broad the character is written, right? And many characters in musical theater land, especially with contemporary shows, right? Um, uh, it's kind of like you're I'll say this, like if it's Legally Blonde or something like that, you're looking for a bunch of people that can pop princess it out, and
Yeah.
it's and that you need that type of girl that can and guy that can kind of that can handle
Yeah.
stylistically that type of music. So I think that with musicals, you're looking for who can handle the music, who can kind of figure out the text pretty quickly. With a play, you don't have to deal with music at all, you know?
Mhm.
And I think even still, when you're working on camera stuff, obviously the strokes that someone uses in their toolbox cannot be quite as broad. They always have to be good actors, but they can't be very broad. And you really do remember that the camera is on you like so, not back here like so. You know what I mean? Like we're at
Yeah.
theater, you're always looking as the audience. On camera, you're looking in the box, you know?
How do you deal with, like, I'm sure you've had this now, like a Zoom or, a film, but it's supposed to be for a play. How would you how would you expect the actors to present, the experience of a play through this?
Oh, I think that I'm looking for how they create their characters. I think that at
Mm,
the end of the day, our job is to find good talent and talent who will be creative and ask questions and have an imagination and with the idea of what working in the confines of these Zoom boxes, kind of make lemonade out of lemons, and
yeah.
it's not ideal, but it's something. And hopefully that you hopefully in this weird like hybrid universe of cinema meets theater, that they're able to create the world that you want to see,
Yeah.
and that's who gets the job, who creates the world. And
Now,
it would be like that in the room, and it would be like that for any genre. Who creates the who creates the world you want to see? That's it.
now for a musical, would you prefer would you prefer them to be standing further back than like as close to here, or does that not matter to you?
I
It's
don't think it matters. I think it's a choice and what the director really wants, but I want to be able to see them. And
yeah.
I obviously for breath support, it kind of some people will
Yeah.
say, "Can I stand?" And you say yes, because you want them to be able to like hit their notes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's musical theater.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that we found with like Zoom though is if it reaches a certain volume, it'll kind of like bounce the sound a little
Yeah.
bit. What do you do about that? Do you just have them just kind of do it at calm, or do you prefer them to like, okay, go film this outward? Because like with Zoom, it's really hard. I mean, if we speak a certain level, it'll bounce it out. It won't sound like a song.
I think as long as I can keep hearing the music, if it's a musical in the background, then I'm okay. Yeah, and for sure, like sometimes it takes adjusting. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I didn't quite hear this, it cut out. Can we figure this out? And then, you kind of have to
Yeah.
act like you're a tech wizard and, figure it out.
Yeah. Now tell me a little bit about, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Skook. You did this in 2012.
Oh,
I was
I don't
looking
really
into
have a
that.
lot to say about that. I hate to tell you. I really don't.
Really? No, not a
Yeah,
lot? Okay. All
no.
right, then we'll skip that. Um, did you want to talk about Don't Let the Night End?
Oh, I could do that. I I
Okay.
I don't have a lot to say on that, but I can tell you I worked with her name is Galia Cole, and she is this amazing, quirky, lovely Israeli actress, and she kind of did it all, wrote it, starred in it, directed it, and she had a vision. And I had met her through an organization that I was a part of called the America Israel Cultural Foundation. And she said, "Hey, Robin, would you be up for casting some roles?" And I said, "Sure."
Mm,
So that was that. But and that's really it. I mean, I have nothing more other than it was kind of like a day in the life. You go to the studio, you get the people, they're there, you audition them, voila.
Yeah.
I will tell you though, if you don't mind me saying, because I have a little bit more to say about this, I worked on a film called Green Flake, and it was right before the pandemic started. And I have a very dear friend. He is, I'll call him my Los Angeles bestie, and his name is Mally Bonner. And I met him when I was in LA working on something called the Octonauts. And Mally was a music director and a vocal coach. And he is known for working with a lot of high-end folks in LA and around the world, actually. And I just love him. He would be my brother from another mother. And he said to me, he is Mormon, and he said to me, Robin, I want to tell the story of this guy named Green Flake. Flake is the last name, and he is a Mormon. He was a Mormon missionary and former slave, and I didn't even know that Utah was a slave state, which made me feel a little stupid in retrospect. But I didn't know, and I guess knowledge is power, right? Sometimes you learn as you go.
Yeah.
And I did my research on Green, and I went back to Mally the day after, and I said, you have to tell the story. Mally is a Black man, and I think he was worried, what would people say? Would it reflect unkindly, within the confines of the Mormon church? And I said, Mally, history is not always pretty, but when I think about what you would want your kids, and he has two kids, what would you want them to learn about? Because slavery isn't just Harriet Tubman. It's
Yeah.
not, and it's not about people who fought for the rights of others, like Sojourner Truth. It's not, an abolitionist. It's not just that. It's stories from around the country of people who were held against their will and forced to work, and abused, and so sure enough, on a shoestring budget, he created Green Flake, and he advocated enough where the film will be showing in Utah at a few theaters. I think, is it this week? So we're there for a few nights at one of the theaters. And then he took the film to Ghana, to Accra and another city in Ghana, which was really cool. And we won a whole handful. I say we, but let's face it, it's him, it's his vision. And because Mally is also a composer, he wrote all of the music that you hear in the film, and it's gorgeous and sweeping and modern, and it works super well with how he told the story, actually. So that was really cool. And because his work did not end, he actually advocated and raised money so that there could be the first monument dedicated to the slaves who worked the land in Utah. And so, the idea that I got to be with my friend working on a project like that, where it's history and history of the past and history of the now kind of meet, and how one man was a slave, one man was a guy living in modern day today, and said, I need to retell this story. Let me tell it my way. Let me see what I can do. And let me also make sure that my ancestors, our ancestors, not just his, but that they were remembered, and to work on that and know how hard and passionately he has tried to rally for this and advocate for all of these things, from film to monument. To me, that's a profound experience.
Wow.
So
I didn't know all that about that film. I'm seeing it right here, but wow, that's quite a story.
Yeah, much more than I cast a few extras.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So transitioning a little bit, I want you to talk a little bit about City College of New York and how you enjoy working there.
I love CCNY. Uh, I was asked by the then chair, Rob Barron, pre-pandemic. He said, "Hey, Robin, if you were to teach a class, what would it be? You can take a few days, think on it. Write it down for me, though." And I said, "Sure." So Rob Barron gives me homework. I do it. And I wrote down ideas, and I had about 3 pages worth of notes. And he and I hopped on a phone call. And he said, "Hey, Robin, you have 3 pages of notes. Do you realize you have enough to teach a semester? Do you want to teach?" And I was like, What? And so he said, "Would you like to be a professor?" And I was like, okay, because it's an adjunct. I was like, an adjunct professor? Okay. I was like, this is not a direction I ever saw in my life, but it was a very easy decision. You know, I took it. I love the idea of it. And I didn't realize how much I was going to love the students. I do.
Yeah,
And then, of course, when I started, I was like a month and change in, and pandemic struck. And so all of my lesson plans had to move to Zoom. And I was dealing with, like, everyone going, "What are we gonna do?" And at the time, there were a few professors teaching this one class. Well, Rob said to me, "Look, they're taking to you really well. I'd like you to stay. Will you stay through the end of the semester?" I was only guaranteed a portion of the class. And
yeah,
I said, "Sure." So I did the whole semester. And then the following year, he said to me, "Would you like the entire class?" And by that point, um, student rates were, student college rates were dropping, and they let go of like 30% of the university system. Um,
yeah.
and so I was like, whoa, I survived this. Okay. It was a little bit like Survivor Island. Like, I got this. I got this. Okay. Like the adjunct who's there twice a week. I made it through. So I did that, and I don't know. And then this year, I'm a spring semester teacher, and I made it through. And my whole this year I was in person with my students, and I don't know, it was brilliant. I love teaching. It's different than I'm teaching them the business from a casting director's standpoint, but at the same time, I don't know. I love it. I love watching them grow and figure things out. And now that it's the summertime and my students are on their own, I get a lot of like, "Hey, Robin, like, I have a question." I'm like, Answer your question. Give me your question. I will answer it." So it's good. Yeah, I don't know. There you have it.
Mm. Well, I think it's a perfect fit for you from everything that we've learned. You're so open to new things, and you are teaching even kind of when you're doing casting in some ways. You like to have that teachable moment. So I think it's a good fit for you, because
Thank you.
now you get to just teach. But I love the fact that he just called you up and said you realized through your notes that you you can teach
Yeah.
a whole semester.
Oh my goodness, yes. And thank goodness when we had a change in the guard, if you will. And our now chair is a woman named Jen Tuttle. And Jennifer is incredible. And thank goodness she is so supportive. And and really, like, with my crazy whims, she's like, "Okay, I see what you're doing, Robin." There are certain times
Yeah.
I have to kind of think academically, which whenever I'm forced to do that, I'm like, "What are you people talking about?" And because I'm
Yeah.
figuring it out as a casting director. And so, but I think that they like that about me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, wrapping up a little bit here, now we're getting to kind of some of the funner questions, as I would like to say.
all right.
What would you like to cast that you haven't gotten to cast?
Oh gosh. Hmm,
Curious.
Give me, I don't know. I think give me a blockbuster musical. I'm your girl. I
Yeah.
think that, yeah, sure. Um, I, I, you know what? I think I just want to, years ago, when I was interviewing for TheaterWorks,
Hmm.
the artistic director said, "What do you want to do in 5 years?" And my answer was cast and be happy. And the answer is not so far removed. I still want to
Yeah.
cast and be happy, but you also have to live on everything. And I think that if I could do it, if I could do anything, I think that I just want to do more. Whatever that next step is, and the wind will kind of show me whether it's the wind or God or whatever you want to, however you want to say it, whatever is presented to me, I just hope it's a little bit more. I hope that it's good and it's special and I get to work with good people. And I hope that I get to hopefully, find great talent and inspire people and in some weird way. And I hope that I'm helping to tell good stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great answer. You've kind of already answered this, but I'm curious to hear what you'll say. Who do you look up to in casting?
My aunt,
I need to say that.
my
Is there,
aunt,
is
for
there,
sure.
is there anybody else that you kind of like would say you modeled after, or, that you,
I've had, you know what? I'm going to say my aunt. I am also going to say that there is a casting director, Judy Henderson, who, when I first left
I know
TheaterWorks,
Judy.
she sat down with me. She didn't have to, but she did. And she said, let me show you how to create your office.
Yeah,
And she did. She didn't have to do that. And she was so kind. And I think that I really relate to those that are kind. And
yeah,
she said, it's going to be okay. You're going to be scared. You'll have lean times. You'll have times that are successful. You've got this. You've got this. And so I think no, I don't think, I am certain with every ounce and fiber of my being that I really appreciate her and I appreciate
yeah.
her creativity. I will also say this too. When I was getting my start, and one of my first New York internship was at an office that's now defunct called Johnson Liff, and it was Jeffrey Johnson and Vinnie Liff. Both have since passed on, but one of the casting directors in their office was Tara Rubin. Tara Jane Rubin, I watched as she grew and grew and grew, and she has always been so very kind and so very giving. And I think I watch her patience through the years, and I remember how wonderful that was as like a 19-year-old working with her, and I was in college, and and it was sort of like, okay. And even if I passed her on the street, and I always, all these years later, funny enough, and even though I've been established in the business for as long as I have, I never anticipate that she'll remember me. And then, I'll pass her and she'll say, "Hello, Robin, how are you?" And I always think, remarkable. Okay, fantastic. I'm so glad, because she is so kind. And like I said, in my book, kindness goes a long way. And I think that, so those three women in particular, although one holds a very special place in my heart, they all in some way, shape, or form inspire me. And I watch the trajectory of their careers and their offices, and I think that they are just dynamos, and there's no stopping, there's just no stopping it. They are dynamos, and they are respected, and they are notorious for their impeccable taste, their fantastic offices, and they're forever patient, kind, and creative demeanors. So there you have it.
Ah, interesting. All right, now let's get to some little bit of fun questions. You're a big Will Ferrell fan. What's your favorite Will Ferrell film?
Okay. What isn't? I love anything Will Ferrell. I look, it depends on the mood. It could be Elf. It could be the Ballad of Ricky Bobby. I don't know. I I also love I also love the fact that he was Mufatu in Zoolander, because like seriously. And oh my
Yes.
gosh, okay, I forgot where it is in the village, but there is an artist who painted a Mufatu on the side of a building, and I have to find it because
Really?
I want to go there and take a picture of the Mufatu.
Wow. Wow. That's yeah, I love him in that movie. I love some of those like little, um what is it? The Kenny Powers show where he plays the Schaefer guy or whatever. I love
Mhm.
that
I mean,
character.
even Anchorman,
Yeah.
I unfortunately or fortunately, when I was at TheaterWorks and people there even knew my obsession, and I had one assistant, and she and I would always say, "Go back to Whore Island," and we are like, "Okay." And I was like, "Seriously, I can't believe that's our love language to each other."
That's funny. Why don't you go back to Horde Island? I've always liked A Night at the Roxbury. Now, I didn't know at the
Oh,
time that like that was the breaking point for those two as a friendship because of
mhm.
backstage drama. But I always liked that movie. Is this just so
And I have
funny?
to tell you that quite frankly, like I like once a month, honestly, like to give myself like happy feelings, I have
Yeah,
to listen to more cowbell on SNL.
needs more cowbell.
Hmm.
Just that's hitting it. It's like I don't know what I'm watching is Jimmy Fallon in there. He's sitting in the
Yep.
back and he's like,
He can
keep
never
it
keep
away,
a straight
Gene.
face. Hmm.
Or the what is it, the prospector when he came
Yeah.
in and he's like, I don't know, we need this guy with all these, pots and pans. They going to be alerting the enemy. You
Yeah.
could see the whole cast just like it's like the most ridiculous thing. But yeah,
It's
no,
it's so funny because I think people, look, I like a good profound anything, but like
hmm,
then all of a sudden it's like, oh, but I need Zoolander in my life, and I need like the Ballad of Ricky Bobby, and I need like all these dumb films because it just you have to break up the monotony somehow.
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's done some dramas out there that like I didn't know about. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't know he
Mhm.
could play a jerk.
Right.
Like he's really talented. But I was fascinated when I heard when I was reading, it's like, okay, I gotta talk to her about that. Because
Oh,
I
and
love
have you ever seen his speech when he won the Mark Twain Award for comedy?
no.
And watch it because you will laugh. Oh my goodness gracious. It is the best acceptance speech on the face of humanity. And he like yells at his wife who's sitting up there watching him get his award. And of course, it's a gimmick, but of course, he tries to accept the award and the award drops. So all you see is like the nose, you know, as he's addressing everyone. It's so funny.
Like what Sacha
Oh,
Baron Cohen did at the BAFTAs, where he knocked the old lady off, and everyone was like, "Wait a minute!" And it's like, "Oh, it's part of a skit," and it's like, "Wow, you just
mm-hmm.
you
Oh,
go
and
nowhere."
my brother and I, one of my brothers and I, we love,
Mm,
there was the one year that he presented, I forgot what it, maybe it was screenplay. Um, and he came out with Kristen Wiig, and so and
I
they
think I
kind of
remember
looked around
this.
the studio and they were like, whoa. And watching the two of them, um, and to this day, my brother and I, like when we're done talking, we're like, "You get out of here," and that's what because it's exactly. Yeah.
I remember he showed up at the MTV Movie Awards and he like peed on stage, and he called Tom Cruise. I call him TJ. I know him as TJ, or or when he did the Anchorman thing, he was like interviewing oh man, I forget his name for the and he's like bringing up all these names, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't think some of those guys are football players." Oh, I'm sorry. You know, we call that in the biz Espen.
Hello,
That's
San
funny.
Diego. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Who means a whale's vagina? And he's like, no, I don't think it's that. Okay, what are you reading? Reading anything interesting?
Oh my
I see the books
gosh.
back there.
Yeah. Okay, I'm always reading, but unfortunately right now you catch me when I'm not reading anything truly profound.
Mm.
I am right now in the midst of Bridgerton because I
Ah,
so I and I have to tell you, like some of the books that are on the bookshelf, I read everything like over and over and over again. I
mm.
don't like to throw out books. And if I run out of room, then I obviously have to donate. And then I have to figure out, do I really want to part with them? I
That's why I
have a
love this. I can
oh,
keep all the books. I could keep
I
all the books on here,
I
especially in
like
New York. It's
I
like
like
there's
touching
no
them though.
space.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
you like the
pages.
touch in the,
Hmm.
you like the pages. So I don't know. I like the content so much. It's like I want to have all the books with me at all times.
Right.
And it's like it would be impossible to have like hundreds of books, especially in New York or, an apartment. It's like
Yeah.
I have to get rid of it. I mean, that was when I first went to New York. That was the first thing I had to be like, okay, I can't bring as many Blu-rays. So I'm
Right.
like, I'm just gonna be living in in like
Right.
a little hovel. Like, okay, I think I could get over here. Um, that's interesting. So Bridgerton, are you on the first book
No, I'm like foreign or something like that. I
or
forgot which
in?
one I'm ending the one about uh for people that are
Yeah,
familiar, like the love story between Penelope Featherington
yeah,
and Colin Bridgerton. So I'm finishing up that one. Um,
yeah.
so and onward to the next.
Well, my mother, when it came on Netflix, she had her sister in them, and they just like that's all they did was watch Bridgerton, like
Mhm.
all the way through.
Right.
And it's quite hysterical. Um, do you have a beginning of the day routine?
I get up.
You get up. Do you have a
Uh,
nighttime routine?
no, that I don't have for sure.
Yeah.
No, I think that uh I no, I have no real routine. I can tell you that I love watching the Today Show. I feel like
Mm.
I always need to know the weather from Al Roker. And I don't really trust anyone else with my weather. Um,
I
so
love that.
um maybe Dylan Dreyer, but it must really truly be Al Roker. Um,
Yeah.
like I'm not opposed to Dylan. I just really like Al. Um, and
Yeah.
uh, and he's in my neighborhood. Um, and yeah, I like the Today Show, so I'll watch that sometimes. I'm not a coffee drinker. I feel like as a New Yorker, I'm already filled with too many neuroses. So why should I do coffee?
Yeah.
I have tea galore in my house, though. I'm a huge tea freak.
Yeah.
And so, and like, it's not like I have like 5 teas and what's your favorite? I have a cabinet of teas. I don't know. It became, I'm not a hoarder, but I will tell you that when it comes to tea, I'm like, just one more box, just one more
Yeah.
box. Um, so I don't know if I have a real true
Yeah.
routine. I wake up, I get ready, and then I do my work, and and I think that because when I'm not in school or in a session of some kind, I think that because I'm working from my house, you have to get out and you have to see the world. And so I do. And, and I, although occasionally there's a Zoom meeting that needs to happen, but I think nowadays I've been trying to see if people will actually want to meet in person because that's
Yeah.
way fun to like, look, you're in full Technicolor.
I can touch
Right.
you. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so yeah, so there's that. So
Mm.
um yeah, I don't know.
Ooh. Do you meditate?
I do not meditate. I am not that zen. I lack sincerely, I lack namaste. Um, um,
That's funny.
I will tell you, I was just in LA working, and my aunt and I took it was I can't remember if it was her first time. I think it was, but we went to a sound bath. And for those of you that don't know what a sound bath is, uh
Mhm.
there are gongs and these uh bowls with water and lots of colors all around you, and they have incense going and they play in. It's so hippie, and it was the most
Oh, wow.
crazy wackadoo hippie experience of my life. And you breathe and you have to be calm, and you like, and oh, and they really do believe in meditation. But when you first get there, they sage you, and I think they saged me extra. And so,
That's so
and
cool.
it was actually really cool. But holy mackerel, I kid you not, when they saged me though, I knew they spent a little extra time, and I was like, okay. And I was like, I think I'm okay. And I didn't know. And I was like, is something wrong? And I was like, are my chakras bad? I didn't know what vocabulary words to use. And so they were like, no, you can go. And I was like, great.
So is it like a group of people that you just go into like
hundred and fifty people on, and we drove up this mountain in Malibu, like a mountain, like where houses are off
yeah,
cliffs. And we were there, and I was holding onto the car as we were driving for dear life. My aunt was making hairpin turns, and I was like, blah. And so
yeah.
anyway, you go up there, and then you park the car and you bring your blankets with you, and everyone, lays there. And first you do this whole group chant, and she says something like, how many people want like world peace and prosperity and happiness and abundance, and then there's a Native American flutist and a harpist, and yeah,
Wow.
and people playing like didgeridoos over you, and like, those big huge like tambourine looking things with like sand in it that kind of sounds like when
Yeah.
they move it, that like it's waves over you, and little like twinkly, I don't know, like chimes over you. It's crazy. And the whole time there's incense going, and I I was like, I hope something is good here. I don't know. So
Wow. That
I was
sounds
it was
relaxing
it
and kind of
and weird.
scary.
Um, as a New Yorker, I was like, wow, I am so not
It's
in
like,
touch
yeah,
with my
it's like,
inner,
don't touch me. Yeah.
right. I wasn't really in touch with my inner namaste, I must tell you, because
Yeah.
because I am neurotic.
Last but not least, what are you watching now?
Oh, good question. Super good question. Okay. I just saw, so Netflix, Beauty Queen of Jerusalem. I just got done watching that series. Um, let's see. There's a few things I was watching. Oh, what is it? Anatomy of an Affair with Rupert Friend. Um,
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
that was amazing and complex and made you angry at people. And thus the neuroticism. And there might be one or two other things, but those are the two off the top of my head.
Interesting. Do you find yourself going back to the theater since you're in New York? I mean,
Oh
New
my
York has the
gosh,
best theaters.
yes. Yes. And I
Film
have to,
Forum, IFC Center, so many good
oh,
movie
I haven't
theaters.
been to film. I've been to a lot of theater, but I haven't
Okay.
been to, no, I think that what I'd like to do, because I feel like you have to see, okay, the last film I saw in the theater was at Christmas time, and I saw West Side Story. I'm sorry, but I think that
Yeah.
I want to see Top Gun, because I feel like I need the
Yeah, that's
Top Gun
good.
experience in the theater.
It's very good.
Um, but I've seen theater. So, and even when I was in LA, we went and saw Moulin Rouge at the Pantasias, and so,
Mm,
which was a lot of fun. So,
interesting. How was that?
mhm.
How was that? I mean, this is the play, right? Right. The play
Musical,
version.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we look, it's an opulent musical in an opulent old theater in the heart of
Yeah.
Hollywood. It was
Yeah.
fun, super fun.
Now, is that back in New York? Is it
It
still?
is,
Is it
yeah,
still in New York? Okay,
it's still in New York,
that's
still
good.
running. It's fun there too. It doesn't make a difference where you see it. It's a fun musical no
Yeah,
matter where.
did better
Um,
than Bring It On in New York.
I you know what? I don't like talking smack about any shows.
I know.
You
I
know
saw
why?
that in Charlotte,
Mhm,
and I liked it, and then it was like I was gonna go see it in New York, and it was like, oh, it's gone.
mhm. You know what? The reason I have to tell you, I'm so big on not saying negative
Mm,
things about look, even if I don't like something, I'm not going to
mm,
tell the world I didn't like it. The reason
yeah,
why is because I know too many people that work too hard on various parts of a show, from everything from casting to lighting to, stage management to the actors on stage. And, why would you insult their good work? You know,
exactly.
you might not
Yeah,
like it. It might not be your cup of tea, but don't insult it because everyone has a
yeah,
place and a time. And you know what? They're making their money and that's what they
yeah.
want. They want to make their money from their art.
I mean, I liked it.
Yeah.
I saw that. I also saw Heather's.
Hmm.
I didn't like some of the liberties they took because I'm such a big fan of the film.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're changing that. But anyways, yes, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
This has been great. How can people reach you?
Okay. So I guess well, okay, if they want to follow me, I don't know. So Instagram, my name, at Robin, like Batman, and Robin Robin, my last name Carus, Carus. For those of you who are actors that are trying to find, breakdowns of stuff that I'm working on Facebook, Robin, again, same way, Carus casting. Um, uh, don't send your headshots and resumes there, but certainly, as I post things, please, by all means, I always post on breakdown services and actors access because that's what I do. And certainly if there are any questions that anyone has, they can find me at robincarriscasting@gmail.com.
All right. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that about does it for this episode. I want to thank Robin Carus. If you would like to contact her, you can find her at Robin Carus on Instagram, as well as Robin Carus on Facebook. And if you have some other questions, you can also contact her at robincarus at gmail.com. Once again, I want to thank Robin Carus for doing this interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was thought provoking. And yes, you can find me at Justin Yachts. And I will see you next time on the DMF.